Right, good morning, everyone. I think we're going to get started. Welcome to this policy dialogue organized by the European Policy Center in cooperation with the Belgrade-based Center for Research, Transparency and Accountability, otherwise known as CRTA, to continue a conversation which we have started about a month ago regarding the student protests still ongoing in Serbia. At the event that we organized on this same topic about a month ago, we spoke mainly about the Novi Sad fatal accident that sparked the demonstrations and about the response of the Serbian government and of the EU, which effectively helped to sustain rather than appease the fed up masses. If anything, the wave of demonstrations has continued to swell and to spread across the country over the past half a year. The aim today is therefore not to repeat the details of the discussion that we had last time. Instead, we want to focus today on the social and political implications of these demonstrations so far, but also henceforth domestically in Serbia. And since some 80 students from this protest have been riding their bikes throughout Europe since early April and are meant to reach Brussels today, we also want to speak about the role and the responsibility of the EU as perceived by the students, but also given Serbia's declared European integration ambition. To open and frame the discussion, I have the pleasure of introducing to you my distinguished speakers today, namely Vukosava Crnjanski, founder and director of CRTA, and Raša Nedeljkov, program director at CRTA. They bring insights from fresh research they have conducted about public sentiment in Serbia and stand ready to share with us their reading of the current situation and expectations about the future. Vukosava, Raša, thank you very much for accepting to contribute to today's discussion. We will first hear from my panelists, and then, as always, I will open the floor for any questions and comments that you might have in the audience. And just to bring us all on the same page, I propose that we start with a question about the state of play regarding this protest, and maybe I'll turn to you, Vukosava. Where do we stand today, basically?
Thank you, Corina. Can you hear me? Everything is fine. Good. Well, thank you for organizing. Thank to EPC. I mean, it's great to have a partner here. Just for the audience to be clear, so CRTA, I guess many of you know about CRTA, but CRTA is a watchdog organization seen as a very critical toward the government policies. And we see ourselves as democracy defenders. So from that, you should read our messages. On the other hand, I don't want to stand between you and data that my colleague Raša will present. Data is from our public opinion poll that we conducted in April, but also there is a comparison from other public opinion polls that we conducted recently in February, also in December, and we started doing that in 2019. Where we are now, I mean, we are now learning the nature of Serbian government. And what we can see now is that Serbia is again a country of political prisoners and exiles. We have 6 people imprisoned and 6 exiled on political indictment based on illegal surveillance. We face police raids on civil society organizations. I think all of you know about USAID case that triggered police entering 4 civil society organizations. Talked about that. We are also now in what we see is that we have arrests of citizens based on social media posts. which we didn't have until now. We have mass surveillance, which we see through media, tabloids, front pages, and also in mainstream media. We also have expulsions of foreign and EU citizens recently. In the same time, we have border detentions of Serbian citizens. We are also now seeing and facing attacks on university autonomy, which haven't been seen until now. We have a peak, I would say, of a repression during a brutal attack on thousands of peaceful protesters on March 15. We had more than 300,000 on the streets where people were targeted with an unidentified sound or air weapon as they stood in silence to commemorate victims of corruption. We have at least 170 violent incidents since November, including car attacks and beating of students and citizens. And I mean, these are the things what we see now. And just maybe to remind us a little bit about the situation. A couple of days ago, you know, and you're aware that President Vučić went to Moscow for a bilateral meeting with Putin and to participate in the parade of an army that invaded Ukraine. Vučić's concentration of power made him a one-stop shop for everything. He dominates public and media space. Audience very well know about that, but just a little bit about, he delivered over 350 public addresses in 2024 and more than 160 already in 2025 about domination. And he positioned himself as an authority above the constitution. This model, I would say, of one-stop shop is also legitimized by many of international community who see President Vučić as the fastest way to get things done. That's always a good excuse. If we want to finish something, we go to Mr. Vučić. So for years, he successfully branded himself as a factor of stability in Serbia and the Western Balkans. And we believe that many cannot buy this anymore. Cracks are forming in what we see Serbia as a captured state. So thanks to students, I think that people started opening the eyes, and now we will also see some data in this presentation. So what we want to say that, of course, not all Serbia is like this. Only our state has been captured. The students who ride their bikes to Strasbourg or run relay marathons to Brussels, and we are expecting them today. We have the decades of effort by civil society organizations and the hundreds of thousands of protesters demanding what we have now today, demanding European values in Serbia. And that's also Serbia today. On Friday, we celebrated European Day, Europe Day, and we are very proud of that. And what we can hear also is that, after 5-6 months of the protests, someone would say, that protest energy is fading out. That's not true. Protests and blockades are daily occurrences. In March and April alone, there were over 3,500 protests, public gatherings, including the largest protest that I mentioned on March 15. And I think that would be, enough for the introduction and for actually Raša to take some.
Yeah, but before we go to him, maybe if I can follow up with a short question, if you can spare a few words telling us whether, okay, so the protests haven't lost steam, they're still ongoing, they're still quite widespread, the energy is still there. Has there been any steps in sort of furthering dialogue with the government, or any sort of, are there any hopes for the protests and the governments to sort of find a way forward? Have there been any signs in that regard?
I think that what we've seen until now is that there is no political will on the side of the government regarding the true dialogue. There are many fake attempts. I mean, like, we as a monitoring organization of the elections participated, you know, like for the whole last year in one kind of a dialogue, working group for improving the electoral conditions. And only thing we can actually bring here is that we faced and witnessed no political will on improvements. Anything that would seize the power of the government and President Vučić actually is rejected or make, you know, like in a fake way of, you know, like willing to do something, but at the end there is no outcome actually of the improvements. We saw for the 5 months that that there is no political will to fulfill the demands of the students. We saw in our survey that more than 80% of population actually support the demands of the students, which was, you know, like, I would say, enough for the signal of to the government that something has to be done. On the contrary, what we faced was just the propaganda, you know, like, and fake attempts of any. We reached the point where students last week asked for the elections. For now, we see what young people would say gaslighting, you know, like that, you know, just confusing for the citizens. And we will see, you know, like, if the pressure coming from students and citizens will at the end result with the extraordinary elections. We'll see now in data.
But I mean, so you're saying that there hasn't been political will to respond to the demands, but has the mood changed among the protesters? Because as far as we've heard, initially the students themselves did not want to engage with the government, and for that matter, they didn't really want to engage with civil society either. So is it a question that none of the two sides want to speak to each other, or one is more stubborn than the other?
So it was not that, or at least I read that it was not that they didn't want to, I mean, like, students didn't want to engage with the government. They just were clear on what they were demanding for. So first, when, you know, like, they listed the demands, which were 4 of them, they, I mean, like, the response they received was from the president and the prosecutor on, let's have a dialogue, meaning let's discuss and debate about the demands. Students clearly said, well, first, to the president, you are not in charge for the demands. That was true. On the other hand, to the prosecutor, they said there is nothing to be debated about the demands. It's, please do your job. What they sent as a message clearly was, we want our institutions to work. And I mean, like, in that way, that was very true, in a meaning that, you know, like, we live, you know, with a capture state, capture institutions, because demands were clear. I mean, like, it was all about transparency, accountability, and rule of law. We want to see rule of law in place. So in that way, I mean, like, this is a trick that comes from the government and the president for the whole and long period. I mean, like, you have some players that actually are not in charge or not the decision makers for the rule of law in a, you know, like a functional democracy. By the constitutions, it's very clear who is in charge to solve the issues. And what citizens saw, I mean, like, together with the students, is that corruption kills. So this is a serious issue for Serbia. And, you know, like, if we have institutions in place, I mean, like, someone would be in jail until now.
And one final issue before we go to the data. I'm just wondering if by now there is some sort of leadership of the protests that has been shaping up. Who is speaking for the protesters? Because if the demonstrators or the demonstrations have become so broad, how do we how have the protesters reached agreement on these demands, and who's sort of leading them, if we can tell by now?
I think that students did a brilliant thing, because what we faced until now is that every and each time when we would, as a country, see some new leader, he or she would be exposed to terrible propaganda, destroying every and each person who would dare actually to criticize the government policies. Students decided to actually be leaderless, to have this broad way of decision-making processes throughout the, so-called plenums. It's a long process, but gave a results. They communicated, perfectly through social media. Data also showed that for the citizens, for the first time, the source of information, the primary source of information for the protests became Instagram. Where actually citizens could get the clear information, the true one, because propaganda is so present that we are flooded with disinformation through our mainstream media. So students brilliantly choose the channel that they can control, didn't put one face because they knew that this face would be destroyed by government propaganda. For now, this strategy functioned. Challenge will be, I'm sure, when the elections come, but I would say I trust them. They did until now a great job. So let's see also how things will and are developing with the data, and to hope the best.
Great. Raša, how are things developing with the data? Very much looking forward to hearing what you've discovered.
Yes, thank you very much. We have 60 pages, and the next 2 hours will be mine. Some of the mansplaining from the Balkans, that's something which I'm sure that you're used to. Joke aside, I will be running through the slides. I will not be showing each and every of them. Some of them are there just if there are follow-up questions that we can focus on some cross-tabbing of the data. What we exactly, well, relay marathon. We did this public opinion poll face-to-face. It was done in first half of the April. So some data is already old, given that the high level of development in Serbia. This is representative for the Serbian population. So everything that we are speaking is relevant on how people are perceiving things. And if I would have to say it in one line, we are capturing tension in Serbia. So Serbian society is in huge tension. I will skip the media part, and I might come back with some explanations later. This slide actually shows, I have to stand up just not for you to be confusing with all the colors. So here we see that the 43% of Serbian citizens think that the Serbia is going into the wrong direction. And some might say, okay, this is because of the protests. Well, you can see that those who are actually supporting the protest, they feel and see that Serbian state as a society is not going in a positive direction. Also, we have a clear distinction among those who are undecided. So it's not only polarized in terms of who is supporting the ruling political parties and who is closer to the opposition political parties. It's clear here that those who are not having the clear line or being still undecided who they're going to support, and that by the way, that pool of people who are undecided is growing, because we are seeing that the soft support to the ruling political parties is going from the soft support to the undecided. And they're also saying that they see that the direction of Serbia is not going in a good direction. What are the main problems for Serbia? You're not seeing here Kosovo, for example, which is usually when the media is forcing this question, this issue, or when they're pumping it, as students would say, the issue of Kosovo, it will be in the top 3. No, you will see that the corruption, systemic corruption, is the #1 issue for Serbian citizens. And that's something which actually is quite correlated to the first demand of the students after the economic collapse on calling into the system corruption, and people are fed up with that. And that's so clear here. Economy and bread and butter issues are usually the top #1 issues in Serbian society. They're there, but they're not as high as systemic corruption. Yes, sure. For those who are supporting the ruling political parties, they are saying that the protests and blockages are the problem. But when you see this issue or the issue of the government, then it's actually, you have more people who are in Serbia calling that the problems with the state of affairs in Serbia is problematic rather than protests as such. And we will be coming to the narratives also to actually understand. This is where we see how we don't have the business as usual back in Serbia, but I'll come to that in a few moments. Support for the student protests is constant, and it's huge, and it's around 60% for the past 6 months, which we expected that it's going to be lower with how time passes, but no, this is something which for us was quite telling that the strength of the student messaging and determination with all of the actions and all of the actions that they had is to have this quite stable and quite strong. And when you understand that, I'm again directing your attention to this bottom of the slide with those who are undecided in a partisan way, whether they are supporting the ruling political parties or the opposition parties. Vast majority of those who are undecided are supporting the student protests, and that's one of the biggest problems for the government. It's not the problem around those who are supporting them. You see that the vast majority of those who are supporting the ruling political parties are against the student protests. Of course, that those who are supporting even more strongly are supporting student protests, but those who are undecided is issue for the government. And I will also say that these 9% of those who are voting for the ruling political parties are supporting protesters. We believe that in these figures is something which will determine this government at this moment not to allow elections, but we can talk about that even further. Then we ask the citizens, who do you trust more? And when we put on one side students and on the other side Aleksandar Vučić as a politician, so not as a president of Serbia, because there is another question regarding the president of Serbia. And you can see clearly here that students have more support than Aleksandar Vučić does. I speak the media part, but Vukosava mentioned in the introduction onto how heavy propaganda machinery in Serbia is functioning, with Aleksandar Vučić having more than 150 live addresses since the beginning of this year, in average 35 minutes. So it's a crazy thing in terms of how persistent pressure on citizens are still consuming information dominantly from the traditional national covering televisions. Narratives are not working for the propaganda machinery, and this is not the business as usual for the government. The questions, are these protests? By the way, Russians are organizing protests. Russian intelligence is organizing protests in Serbia. That's one of the messages of the government to the different actors. Color revolution is the main narrative. Serbian citizens don't buy it, despite the media propaganda machinery.
this is also the part of gaslighting. You know, it depends on which government addresses. You know, like if they are like talking to international community West, from political West, they would say it's about Russians. If they are talking to, you know, like a mass population or, you know, like somewhere else, they are saying, well, it's a color revolution that's organized by West. So I mean, like this is also, but it's obviously that doesn't work now.
People think that the protests are not violent, despite the constant messaging that students are those who are blocking, who are making people nervous, who are disrupting the life. People don't see them as violent, and that's one of the key messages. Another one, that because of the protests in Serbia, the Expo project is in question. The development of Serbia is in question, and it's all due to the student protests. Citizens are not blaming students for the bad economy. Still, they are blaming the government. So that narrative is not functioning. Are the student demands being fulfilled or not? If you ask the government, yes, 6 months ago, already on the second day, even before the demands were made. But actually, citizens are not thinking that the student demands are being. And that's something which was one of the most consistent narratives in our media, that the student protests are fulfilled. And then I'm sure that some of you saw some of the tables of the Serbian government showing clearly how things are being checked, like with elections or other things, but we can talk about that also maybe during the coffee. Performance of the government, that's where we see the crack in the government. That's where I believe that the Serbian government is being quite nervous around. Are you satisfied or dissatisfied? You see that more than 50% of citizens are dissatisfied with the performance overall of the government. Look at the, sorry.
Corruption, fourth.
Yes, where it is. Look at the corruption. We see now consistently the issue of corruption. That is something that Serbian citizens are not satisfied with. By the way, these figures here were never this low for the Serbian government. In data that we took from some other agencies, including those who are working closely to the government, Ipsos to cut it short. So historical data is showing that these figures on the left with the support, it's always around 30% or higher. We never saw these figures so low. So we see in every aspect of the work of the government low ranks, and this is something which is, I would say, another indicator.
I would like to add just regarding the corruption. So corruption is a topic for citizens very often. I mean, like what we see, I mean, like throughout the, I mean, decades, every government who would at the end, you know, like every party who would won, you know, at the end of the elections, they had a very clear message on fighting against the corruption. So this is very important. And what we saw now that although we have a huge action by the government on arresting, you know, like people, even from the political party, the ruling political party. So there is a big campaign in fighting against corruption. Citizens are not happy because they see, and this is the, you know, like this is just the performance, because, you know, like who was arrested until now? It's like some small unimportant people.
Citizens are not buying it.
Yeah, citizens.
And I forgot to mention, this public opinion poll is done in the peak of the campaign of Serbian government around the 12th of April event. So on 12th of April, Serbian basically captured state for the Serbian Progressive Party and the movement they created, organized and hijacked every resource to bring people throughout Serbia in Belgrade. And there was a massive campaign around this launching of the movement for people and statehood, if I could translate it like that. In the peak of this campaign, we have figures like this. So citizens are not buying it anymore. That's important. And who are those citizens who are dissatisfied? Look at those when you cross them with the support to with the support of to the EU. So those who are supporting the EU, they are dissatisfied. Those who are following critical media, obviously they're dissatisfied. But look at those who are supporting or not supporting the protests. So those who are not supporting the protests, they are satisfied with the performance of the government. Those who are with the students, they are deeply dissatisfied on how the government is performing. This is the approval rating of the trust actually in the institution of the president of Serbia. So it's not Aleksandar Vučić, president of Serbia, but the institution of the president of Serbia. We asked for different other institutions, for the parliament, for the civil society, for the government as such. I must say that approval of president of Serbia is almost the same as the civil society, literally. And then you can understand how bad these figures are.
I mean, like for those who understand that, you know, like a campaign against civil society organization in Serbia is for a long period, a constant. So, you know, like all propaganda machinery is actually directed into civil society organizations being, you know, like pictured as a foreign mercenary, someone who is working against the Serbian interests, etc., etc.
We asked on the five scale to rate Aleksandar Vučić performance, and he got undesirable rating. So this is something which is completely different when you compare data from previous years. This is the game changer. This is something which we don't have anymore, business as usual back in Serbia. Democracy in Serbia, I know this is a bit confusing, but what I will run you through it. What is important on the democratic dimensions that we asked? For example, justice, equal treatment by everyone in the courts, or changing of the or punishing those political parties that are not performing well in the elections is something which Serbian citizens think it's extremely important, and then we don't have it in Serbia. But I would like to draw your attention, because we did a split here. Green is who are supporting the protests or the students, and those who are not supporting the protests. To these two dots here, these are who are basically pro-government, anti-protest, anti-students. Them two are rating that punishing the ruling party in elections when they do a bad job is important. It's not happening in Serbia. So it's not something which they see possible in Serbia. And justice, they don't see justice as well in Serbia, meaning that the rule of law is not applied equally to everybody. So when we are looking in a nuances, in a shades, in this ballet of citizens' beliefs, we see here a huge threat again for the regime, and I will be using the term regime here because these are people who are voting for Aleksandar Vučić, and they don't think that we have justice in Serbia. And that's something, this is one of the main emotions when we are asking people, how do you feel about the situation in Serbia? This injustice, this systemic corruption is something which we see throughout the presentation. Obviously, how should we be exiting this crisis? Citizens are seeing elections as the way out. They are not seeing formation of the new government formed by the current majority in the parliament as the way out. They did, and actually, this was not asked in the moment when students clearly communicated their message toward requesting the elections. So this was before their and we are going to do another poll to see how things are moving and changing. But this is something which clearly shows what is the sentiment of Serbian citizens regarding the elections. You wanted to say something? Okay. This is a negative remark about the new government of Serbia. So in the last couple of days of the polling, we got the Matsut government. They already got a negative remark saying that this government cannot, and the new prime minister cannot solve the deep societal crisis, period. This is regarding the trust. I will skip that now. Basically, Serbian citizens are not seeing political parties as trusted. And when you oppose them, both parties in power and opposition, when you trust them. None of these have the trust among the citizens. So we are talking about also the crisis among the political parties. It's not only the issue with the opposition parties, it's also with the ruling political parties. Now, movement. People are seeing it through. The reason for the movement to be established is not because as the main narrative is for the future of citizens, Serbia wants to work, Serbia wants to develop. No, it's because SNS is in decline. And people are seeing that even more on the local level. So in small communities, people are seeing, and that's why, for example, in Zaječar right now, city of Zaječar, there are local elections on the 8th of June. You cannot see a single high-level official in the campaign in Zaječar. Not meaning in campaigning only, but also not on the lists. So they are putting away their cadre that are being exposed to Serbian citizens in those small communities because Serbian citizens, remember, corruption, systemic corruption. Where can you see the systemic corruption easily? It's in small communities more vividly than in bigger areas. And especially this is a problem for Vučić. Obviously, those who are voting for Vučić, they say, yeah, this is the movement is for the future. Those who are for the position, obviously, they see it as just another maneuver, political for Vučić. But those who are undecided, they see it true as well. They don't buy the movement as something which is for the development of the future. They see it as a tactic.
And just a small reflection on this. I would say that, because many people ask us about the opposition. So weak, very weak, without the clear messages. So that's what we see. But this is also the actually showing that with don't know and big number of don't know is, I would say, lazy work of the opposition, because they are not sending the message on what was going on. So there are many, there is a room for improvements. However, what we don't see is that, for example, opposition is clearly, saying what's going on, because this is, too obvious, but just maybe not for them.
Now, about the foreign influences and how people in Serbia are looking into the traditional partners. So we are historically asking questions about the trends on how do Serbian citizens see economical role of EU or other countries, political, etc. So just quickly over there, you will see that China is still perceived as #1 economical partner for Serbia. When you combine not only EU as an answer, but also Germany, France, and Italy, we didn't combine Hungary in this because people are not seeing Hungary, according to our data, as a EU. I don't have to go there, I suppose. Okay. So we combined everything here as responses, and this is how it trades. This is a trend from the February 2023, and we do see decline. And we actually think that together with this, there is also a question when it comes to the politics. Russia is number one partner. This is being something which is consistent, but look at the drop. So these are the allies of Alexander Vučić perceived in public.
Because of the narratives.
Because of the narratives, because of the everything. With the drop of popularity and popping the narratives of Vučić, we also do see that citizens are, in that sense, being confused and saying, okay, we don't know whether now the biggest political support to Vučić is there. And of course, the confusion is huge. And this is a space where we see opportunity for the European Union. Actually, right now, talk to the people, don't talk to the government. Of course, talk to the government, right? But focus on people. Convey messages to people directly. Try to find ways on how to address Serbian nation. Don't ignore these facts. We can talk about how. Yeah. There are tools and there are ways on how, when some of your, I'm hearing that some of high officials will be traveling maybe to Belgrade tomorrow. this is something which is going to be assessed extremely importantly by Serbian nation, how these meetings will be reported in our media. We can expect that they're going to be read as a support to the government, but whether there are going to be messages that are different. For example, like Commissioner Kos conveyed strong messages and directly talking to Serbian citizens, linking to the students and how students are and what are demanding. The message that what students are demanding are the same fundamentals that EU is demanding from the Serbia. Students are not demanding, especially we will be seeing what their messaging is going to be with the start of the campaign and how they're going to organize that. That's something for us is unclear, us as a public. But so far, students were demanding clear rule of law to stop with the impunity. And these messages should be repeated by the European officials as well.
I would say, and we can discuss, I'm sure, after, students open the door. They shake in the society. And this is important. They're running toward the Brussels. They're not running toward the Moscow or Beijing, and it's clear message. And there is a lot of people, it's a silent majority, that is looking at the students and EU reaction. So that's, I mean, like, it is important. And again, I mean, like, acknowledging what's going on in Serbia is a first step. We see some of the public officials recognizing and doing this first step, but not all.
There was a usual question why there are not EU flags on the protests. I'm sure that some of you might have that, but there are not any other flags as well. The first institution the students spoke to was in Strasbourg. It was not in Moscow or anywhere else. The students are running towards the Brussels, not to Moscow or anywhere else. So that's an important message. And here as well, those who are supporting the protests, how they are looking positively or negatively about the EU or Russia or China. So I think that there is a clear throughout the whole presentation, and we'll be sharing this. This is available online, and we can obviously go into much more details. Those who are demanding functioning of the institutions, who are trying to fight the captured state, who are trying to fight for justice in Serbia, for courts to function, to prosecution to prosecute, are the same those people who will be voting for the EU on the imaginary referendum there. The government is right now, especially, I have to mention, Vuka, you didn't, if I didn't catch it, sorry, sound cannon, FSB being called to verify that it was not a sound cannon. And finally, Vucic traveling on the victory parade with how many EU leaders? So that's something which is, I would say, consistent, clear message of Serbian citizens that we want organized country by the laws, and we are seeking help. This help is something which must be read by not supporting the regime, but supporting the Serbian people. I will stop here. If there are questions, of course, we'll be trying to answer them.
All right. Well, I'll break the ice with some follow-up questions. And of course, if anybody in the audience wants to come in, please, you can raise your hand to signal your interest. Some things that stood out to me, I mean, there is a positive development, because for a long time we've spoken about the need for change to be emerging from within Serbia, that it wasn't up to the EU or to external actors to provoke anything. It was up to Serbia and Serbian citizens to decide the direction in which they want to go. And now there's movement happening. Okay, so I'm acknowledging that that's positive in terms to the discourse that we were having until now. But I look at the data that you're showing, and my reading is also of concern, because what I'm seeing, and I don't know, perhaps I'm wrong and I stand corrected in that case, but I'm seeing that there is quite a bit of polarization. The society is divided, is fragmented, is polarized. And this makes the situation quite delicate and quite volatile. It could go either way, in a sense. So I don't know if you want to spare a few words about that, and also about what is the profile, if you know, of the different camps, so to say. So who is in the, well, I mean, the protests, we know they're young students, younger generations. Are they joined by any other people in terms of socioeconomic characteristics, and who is in the camp supporting the government, and very importantly, who is among the undecided? Because those could be the kingmakers in this case. So that would be one question, and I have a couple of others.
Well, sure, maybe.
Can we? Okay.
So, yes, Serbian people are divided, but majority of them are saying that they want institutions, they want rule of law. And despite all of the propaganda, since 2017, CRTA is monitoring media when it comes to foreign influences, EU, Russia, China, NATO, US. And some of you know that consistently Serbian mainstream media are reporting negatively about the EU. I don't have the graph here, but it is consistently positive towards Russia, negative towards the EU, negative towards the collective West. Despite all of that, we have figures as we spoke. Serbian citizens, majority of them support protests. 80% of citizens support demands of students. 80%. Despite all of the propaganda. And I missed the beginning of not missed, but I skipped the part for the media. Apologies for now this. Let me just go back on how Serbian citizens are consuming media, consuming information, and where. It's television, number one. And it's also pro-government media, number one. So despite this consumption culture or practices in Serbia, you have 80% of people who are supporting the demands of students, right? That's a common denominator. That's something which connects all the people. We want functioning society, period. We want institutions strong, period. And that's where I think that we have to work. These are the narratives that we have these are the opportunities actually that we need to work on.
Just one sentence. I mean, like Raša said, but just maybe to clarify, because I saw some faces. When we say that the majority of media, I mean, like in our media monitoring, we see that, you know, like those media pieces are negative about the EU and positive about the Russia. Those are the media articles or media pieces that has emotions. The majority about the EU is strictly bureaucratic language. You know, like zero emotions. When we come about the emotions, then it's negative. Because negative is like EU is conditioning us. And then it's linked to Kosovo. So this is this circle. Now, I mean, like it's EU is dominating, but in a bureaucratic way. Emotions goes to brotherhood, you know, like brothers from Russia and brothers from China. So these, and this is very important, because what Raša is saying is we are seeing that since 2017, every day we are like monitoring this. And more important is that, you know, like this government, what we see in our media monitoring is not preparing society for EU integration. Zero. And I mean, like, and despite that, we have this.
And this is extremely important slide. So do you have a positive or negative opinion when it comes to the EU? Look about the undecided. So 50%, more than 50% of those who are undecided politically have the positive attitude towards the EU, despite, I mean, 2017 to 2025, every single day, the net value of positive versus negative about the EU is negative about the EU, including the year and the month when the full-scale invasion of Russia towards Ukraine happened. In that 2022 whole year, we had more negative about the EU, more positive about including about the Russia. So in a net value, Russia had always more positive than a negative. And that's just how media are, consistently sending the same message. Despite all of that, and look at where is the support for the protest coming from. So there is clear to us determination. Now we believe that it's really crucial to understand how following months will unfold and how EU institutions will find a way to communicate with students and other actors, and whether the government is only going to be the remaining interlocutor there or not.
Yeah, I do want to open the floor to questions. Just to add to whatever the audience wants to ask you, I'll just say that you're right. Now it is about what will happen next, because of course, if you want to change institutions, and policy making and policy change has to happen through government at the end of the day. And if the current government is not trusted to do it, and if the opposition is weak, even if elections are to take place, who is going to do that change, even if there is desire for it? So that's some, maybe we can spend a little bit of time discussing that. But I want to give you the microphone now, because I think it's being recorded, so maybe you need to speak in the microphone. Sorry.
Thank you, Stefan Israel for Europe Table. You asked more or less my question. I mean, we know that Vučić is very good in organizing elections. I think you have probably a figure how many he did. So isn't there a risk that, I mean, he will also win this with all the propaganda machinery, this election? So maybe a bit naive question or a blunt question. Wouldn't you need, instead of elections, you would need some kind of a revolution, or I don't know, a recreation of institutions in some way or another? So
is provocation or
no? I'm yeah, but I just want to add a couple of questions, and then we can come back. So yeah.
Yes, hello, Klaus Seeger from the independent unions here in Brussels. We have a Serbian doctors union, and I just come back from Belgrade, and this union, which is politically neutral, basically sidelined with the protesters in December. And so they informed me, and I said, okay, let's come with a delegation and make a big declaration, something. They say, you better stay in Brussels, because if you come, we have an image problem. And referring to what you said, now it's the moment to reach out. So it's also a little bit a tricky question for us. They are supporting the protests, but how's the best way to behave? I'm not quite sure yet how to behave in this situation. So
I'll take one more and then we come back. I'll take one more and then we come back.
Hello, good day. My name is Stefan Šipka from the European Policy Center. Thank you for interesting findings about the latest state of play. Maybe one more technical question is, when you did this research, did you also ask the respondents about their political or party affiliation? Maybe, and if there are any interesting insights when you actually compare it, there's also on that criteria. And the other one is in the elections. I mean, what we see is that there is a strong support for students. The opposition is not in its best shape. And the question is, how will this translate into an actual political process? Because in the end, it becomes a very practical issue about securing the sufficient number of seats in the parliament. And to what extent can your research offer some kind of a guideline as to what we could deduce, or how this process may unfold? Because also, I think what I get from your findings, if I'm not mistaken, is that there is a support for the provisional government still, right?
It's off the table. It's not the topic anymore. But yeah.
If it's kind of, can be tied into the, Anyways, thank you.
I know that there are a couple more hands, but let's respond to these questions and then I'll come back to the floor.
Yeah, Start. It's not from data. It's my opinion that first EU made itself and a non-actor in Serbia because of, I would say, domestic behavior and then Brussels behavior, turning the blind eye on every thing that was happening regarding the rule of law, fundamentals, etc., etc. So the values were not important, although I would say civil society organizations, part of the society was screaming about breaches of the law, etc., etc. 2023 peak elections. We had European Parliament with a clear message, but nothing happened. And I can go further. So what happened was that, citizens who are, together with propaganda, were looking from the EU, to show the case, to do something. They just, I would say, realized that, they're alone. EU need to bring the trust, bring back the trust from, from the citizens that are naturally in line with the EU. And that's, I read, I don't know, students said, let's focus on demands, rule of law, accountability, transparency. Don't talk EU, Russia, because that's a playground that Vučić set in our society. Further, we don't have opposition. And that's, okay, we do have, but they're very weak. Students are now saying, government doesn't want to fulfill our demands, which is functional democracy. This is a state where we want to stay. This was also very clear. We want functional democracy in Serbia. This is the country in which we want to stay. And then they call citizens. They also, distance themselves from every and each political actor because propaganda ruined our society and built a huge distrust in every and each actor. So they said, okay, what we can do, let's try to reset the things. I read that in that way. We need time. So if we think that things can change over the night in Serbia after we are following 2017, but this is actually from the beginning of this government, which is now, how many, 12, 13 years. If we think that things can, annul and restart, and reset over the night, that will not happen. So I would say, and this is one more thing, we have now visible things in society, which is okay, protesters, protest students, no opposition. Then there is, this is visible. Then there is something which is non-visible. This is, I would say, the part of the society that actually shows or should show some resilience, like unions, like political parties, like civil society organization, etc., etc. What we see now is a huge repression toward those actors that should be resilient to what we, have. This is non-democratic processes. And this is where I would say we seek EU help. Stick to unions, stay with unions, send a clear message, stay with civil society organizations. What happened when, police raided our office? How many organizations, institutions reacted? We had only Mr. Saracen, coming to Belgrade tomorrow, meeting with all organizations that, have been raided by police. We didn't have clear messages from other, institutions. And then, so visible, non-visible, and then, completely hidden parties is systemic corruption that, EU officials, for example, are completely silent on. We live this. So, I would say that, we need, constant work. We need constant messages. I would say toward the EU, officials, especially politicians, especially, networks of political parties, treat Serbia as constituency. People need to hear your messages, not only one message, but the constant messages. If you think that X post will solve the problem. With nuances, come on. I mean, like, X is not for mass communication. What we have is a constant propaganda. Like, you guys are conditioning Serbia. This is what we hear from the president and the officials. So we need the work. We need serious strategic work. And students open the door. Don't expect from 19, 20, 21 years old people to solve all problems. It's up to us, all of us, if we really want to see a sustained change.
Just clear, short answer about the political parties. So we see that there is Vučić reached the ceiling with the movement. It's around 30%, but the percentages are not that important for this part, because it's really unthankful to project in a situation in which we don't have the clear. We have too many unknowns. We don't have the called elections. We don't know how the students will be running, how the opposition will be responding to the students' decision to call for election. So far, it's being different. Are they going to run elections or not? Are they going to support students or not? So these are the questions. But in all these dilemmas, Vučić came to 30%. It's not moving. So the movement, it's there. There is a clear potential, what we saw with and without the students. So those who were voting for the opposition, united opposition. That's the key that citizens are asking: united opposition, and that's something which is being consistent for the years. Even before the elections in 2023, December, citizens were asking for united opposition. How they performed, that's also a question, whether they campaigned or whether they did not. Was it sincere or was it not? But that's on the other side. So there is a clear, huge potential for students to make a balance. And there is a huge threat that we see in the process of dialogue, because it's a hypocritical issue, actually. Who are you speaking with? Who are you sitting at the table with? For example, we as organization were asked, pushed, I don't know how to my English is not that good to find the diplomatic words, to sit at the table to work on improvement of the electoral conditions in the past year. It ended up with 0 effects by state of Serbia adopting changes of the law that would allow audit of the voters registry, the biggest issue from the elections back in 2023. And Regulatory Authority for Electronic Media, so-called REM, even for which there was smooth opportunity for government to elect their own officials or candidates in this composition of council, they didn't do it. They just didn't do it. Just didn't do it. That's it. They didn't care. These two, by the way, were part of the growth plan as conditions for progressing, but some of you know it much better than I do. So there was no interest. Serbian government has no interest in advancing the conditions because the Serbian government is captured by the political parties, period. We don't see the strength in the institutions to oppose. And after what we witnessed in the previous months, and especially months, this level of capturedness is even higher. Therefore, dialogue is, under these conditions, not possible. The only solution that Serbian citizens are asking for are the elections. And our professional opinion as election observers, as Democracy Watchdog organization, is that these elections will have to be run in the conditions that are as they were or even worse. So without changes in REM performance, without media improvement and pluralism, without checking the voters registry, how it can be compensated? Well, by much more organized watchdog presence on a polling places, united approach from different actors. That's something which we are hoping to see in the following days and weeks, as especially students come out with their idea on how to play in these elections. What we are fearing is closely related to the Vučić visit to Moscow and how the tabloid media and how the intelligence community in Serbia is behaving in more direct targeting the individuals, organizations on the basis of treason, on the basis of working against the Serbian people, this kind of narrative. We are fearing that the government will opt for more radical maneuvers in the following days, weeks, or months.
Okay, but if I listen to you, it's not just a question of electoral process. So how these elections take place, how the campaign happens. It's not only about that. It's also about the political options or the choices that people have. And if I understand you correctly, there is a lack of choice as well, because you don't have the people, at least a part of the electorate is not supportive of the government and the ruling party, but the opposition is not faring well. So what do you hope the outcome of elections to be in these conditions?
It's a complex question, but personally, and I think that the direction and what students are saying is that these elections, potential elections, are not going to be around policies or ideology. There are going to be a potential for reset of the institutions so that the first new parliament elects the government that will work on conditions for the potentially more free and fair elections in which ideas, ideologies, and policies will be competing. Because right now you don't have the ground for, you don't have where to, this data, a single second of our reports regarding the democracy elections were communicated on any of the national TV. So we know it from our own press clipping, right? But there is no pluralism for any other group that wants to contradict the narratives that are placed as the must or the mainstream by the government. So we are now talking about creating opportunity for a reset, a soft revolution, if I can connect to that question. Revolution in the sense that these elections are just going to be a hard reset button on the computer, and then hoping for opportunity to, because also important part is that connects directly to why there are no EU flags at the protests, etc. Students are not homogeneous. There are too many different ideologies among them. And they are succeeding for the past 6 months to put all of the differences aside and to focus on what they are gathered around. They gathered around the pure requests for the rule of law, from transparency, right? These were their demands. And because they were not delivered, they're asking, okay, we need to create a condition in which they can be delivered. So they are not even saying anything publicly about Russia, EU, Kosovo, Srebrenica, all of the narratives that now government tabloids are trying to drag them into, these dividing things. They are trying to keep people as gathered as much around the core, and the core is reset, I would say.
2 sentences. Serbia is electoral autocracy. To translate, only opposition can lose the elections. What we want to see as, is that this change, that, elections are again the tool for potential change. And this is how we see the demand coming from students. Students are saying, we want elections and we want to candidate the list, which will bring, a reset in electoral conditions that could, bring potential change or whatever is majority of people are saying on a, more free and fair competition. The thing is that also they want to see their demands to be fulfilled. That's, quite fair for, I would say, as far as I read. I don't know, we are not the people, for the students. What we also read is that that will be limited government. You know, like something that will last for a year and a half, just enough to reset and to make these conditions work for potential free and fair elections.
Right. I don't know if this, okay. I want to give our audience the possibility to come in, so I'll collect another round of questions and then you can say half a sentence more if you want. So I know that you have been waiting patiently. Yes.
I mean, Maya Stanovska from EES. As you talk, more thoughts wake up in my mind, so my questions also change. But the first, I mean, just to translate, if I understand also the vision that you're projecting for change, you also mentioned that this is, I mean, this is clearly a very polarized society. The issues that unify people are rule of law, transparency, accountability, and
corruption as well.
Exactly. And you demand for EU to be clear on riding this wave, right? So you should ride this wave that students have started. What is the risk of this being just delegitimized right away, considering that this is such a polarized society and the control of media by the state? How does EU avoid that risk of ruining this wave instead of riding it? So that's the first question. The second question is, when you talk about this one-year government, change of electoral conditions and so on, who has the legitimacy and mandate to do that, both domestically and internationally? Knowing that similar processes have happened, for example, in North Macedonia when we had captured state. Captured state happens by someone with legitimacy being put in place. In Serbia, considering how split the society is on whom to trust internationally, as well as domestically, who would be able to bring about any change and gain legitimacy by the people?
Another question at the back and one in the front, and we close.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for the debate and the presentation. It's highly interesting. My name is Stina Sandgren. I work in democracy support in the European Parliament, and we're a few colleagues here from the European Parliament, all working on the candidate countries and, of course, Serbia. But as you have more or less explained yourself, the democracy support activities have been pretty much put on the back burner lately because, because it's impossible to collaborate with Vučić and the government of Vučić, and our democracy support activities mostly require a cooperation with the national parliament. We have very many different programs, such as citizens' assemblies, women empowerment programs directed mainly to female politicians. And we work with civil society and media and the national parliament. So my question is, you see any possibility, I guess your answer is no from what you've been saying, of engaging the national parliament in some kind of a democracy support activities from our side? I see you're already shaking your head. Okay, as this is not the case, how should we proceed? How can we best help you with the numerous activities that we have at our disposal?
All right. And finally, Andre.
Thank you very much. I want to refer to the most probably upcoming visit of Antonio Costa to Western Balkans, where he will have or stay for a half day in each country, approximately, starting, if I'm not mistaken, with Serbia. So far, the meeting or the visit is still on. As you know, there is pressure from within the European Parliament, also an initiative from the Standing Rapporteur on Kosovo to dissuade Antonio Costa from visiting Serbia. How do you look at that? If you were to structure his agenda in Belgrade. How would you see it, and what would your advice be? Because in my personal opinion, this is not just a passage in one country of the 6 Western Balkan countries. It is hugely important, and huge damage can be done if communication is not what does not go beyond the usual talk and appeasement, and and we know how Vučić is, and he will try and manipulate things. Like before going to to Moscow, he said, I mean, punish me also almost in a masochistic way, punish me, don't punish Serbia. So how do you think this could play out?
I'll try to be short. Regarding ruining, with the potential, like messages and so on. Sorry, but you ruined already. I mean, like, let's change. Let's start talking. Let's, be different in this way. Don't be silent. I mean, like, this is the mess. Don't be silent. I mean, like, I heard so many times, like, we are afraid of, that Serbia will turn toward the Russia if we are too, like, this is a trap. I mean, like, Russia is already there. Come on. I mean, like, you see this? What you want already? Like, because, I mean, it's already there. I mean, all grievances has been used by this government to, like, build a distrust between the EU and Serbian citizens. So, I mean, like, it's already there. Let's change. You should change as well, because doors are open, clearly. The help of the European Parliament, we appreciate all the work you have done until now. I mean, like, we're following very closely what you did. I believe that you should talk to students, because they are calling also for community meetings called Zborovi. It's interesting because a lot of people replied, meaning started organizing themselves in Zborovi, where they discuss a lot of things. Ask them about citizens' assemblies. Help them with structuring things. I mean, like, this is also something that we experienced. It's great. I think students can also learn from you, because these citizens' assemblies are the structure way in which, people can also decide what they want or what they don't want. So, I mean, like, there is a room. On Mr. Costa's visits, I would say meet with as much as it's possible actors in Serbia, and don't be silent on that. I mean, like, until now, we have a lot of officials from EU or other countries, member states, different, like, meeting civil society, but in, like, not publicly, not communicating publicly. We need public acknowledgement on, yes, we see civil society organizations, we see students, we see unions, we see, like, different opposition, etc., etc. I mean, like, we're also the part of Serbia. Yeah, I was quick.
Here is the profile of the people who are for Serbia joining the EU or who has the positive attitude towards the EU. So this is not something which is radically different in comparison to the previous public opinion polls. And this is where you can find those people, what kind of media do they follow, and what kind of political affiliation do they have. For us, it's always telling that those who are voting for the Serbian Progressive Party, the ruling political party, are not for the EU. That's maybe the reason that we see in a past decade that Aleksandar Vučić and his political apparatus was not investing a single gram of his political weight to change direction of Serbia towards the EU. Au contrary, he continuously, domestically, internally worked against the EU project, and externally, he used every opportunity to convey messages on why he's not able to persuade Serbian citizens to more massively support EU project. So for us, it's clear that Serbian government, for many reasons, are not interested in European project, and that's the fact. By the way, you have a minister who burned the EU flag, and he's elected as a member of the government. So that's the message. You don't have the minister who burned any other flag. or the burning the flag as an action to be a legitimate, a gesture. No, but you have a minister who burned the EU flag. So we believe that, and also for high official visit to Serbia, don't do what you used to do. Situation in Serbia changed. Vučić, despite all of the messages from the high-level officials, went to Moscow. That's a message. If you go, handshake, have a press conference, a couple of phrases, it will be abused heavily in domestic media. And those who are wearing the EU flag on a daily basis are seeing this as a gesture of hypocrisy. We need you to be more vocal towards us in Serbia, and there are the ways on how to reach us.
Despite people that, we have decent people in institutions, career diplomats, we have great people in the institutions. They could, lead, institutions to work in a, direction of, having the rule of law. Don't forget, we are a capture state. Those people are not free.
National Broadcast Service, the broadcast service that students blocked for them not working their job. I must ask that there is a request, official request for Mr. Costa or every high official to address Serbian people directly on National Broadcast Service RTS, for example. That's number one. And there are other media and social media, so the messages can be reached. Of course, that the private commercial TV stations will, stick to the propaganda, but there is National Broadcast Service, and I believe that Serbian number one political goal is joining the EU. Then the National Broadcast Service should follow that policy of the Serbian government, if there is that policy at all.
It seems to me it would also be important to reach to the other segments of the society that you've mentioned, especially the undecided, and to find ways to communicate from the EU to them as well, not only to preach to the converters, but that's just as a parenthesis. For the last few minutes, what I would like to maybe give you each 60 seconds because we shouldn't forget about the students who are arriving in Brussels today. And if you could tell us one hope, expectation, suggestion that you might have from their visit or for them. I know you're not their spokesperson, you're not representing them or anything, but reflecting about their effort and their passion and what is it that you would hope they achieve, or what would you advise them to do? I'll give you each 60 seconds.
Yeah,
I'm going to start crying.
We will. Yeah, you can. I mean, we are very emotional about that.
Understandable.
As I would say, majority of citizens, because they give us some hope. I mean, I'm old enough to remember my students' days, and that was, during the Milosevic period. So not becoming, as I said, neither a spokesperson, neither advisor, neither, although they, government want to, put the CRTA in this way that, we are sort of organizing everything. It's far away from the truth. I think that, they really woke up the hope in Serbia, among citizens who thought, that, changing something is really far away from, a reality. And I'm really happy to see them here. I mean, and this, welcoming him, not just by, Serbian community or those who are supporting Serbia, but also, officials. I would love to see, clear messages, recognizing their what they sacrificed until now. It's obviously a year of their life. Obviously, I mean, like the physical things that, you know, like really, I mean, all those marches, they are like connecting people, connecting cities, you know, like they did a really great job, and they send a clear message of, you know, like hope and love. And this is the thing. I mean, emotions are, again, you know, like back in politics, I would say, you know, like in Serbia. And I would love to see warm welcome for them here, and that, you know, like them to stick to their message. I mean, like they're very clear. And I will repeat, they sent to us, you know, like a clear message on in which country they want to stay. This is very important. Thank you.
I would just say Serbian citizens are literally running towards the EU, towards the heart of the EU. And we showed that majority of Serbian citizens would like Serbia to be part of the EU. So treat those people who are coming today and who are going to be here in the next couple of days as the main interlocutors of Serbian people. Yes, there is official Serbia. Yes, there are institutions. But again, for too many years, this establishment did everything in their power to crush all of the democratic potentials in Serbian society, among the civil society, among the media, among even the students. They are suffering tremendous pressure. They are sacrificing their academic studies, their future for the bigger cause. They're exposed to smear campaigns, physical abuses, arrests, detentions. And if there are no voices here who are recognizing that from all of the across the EU institutions, then I believe that the hopes are going to plummet quite quickly, and the future of Serbia in the EU is extremely going to be questionable.
Thank you. I think the metaphor of students literally running towards the EU, Serbia running towards the EU, is a nice way to conclude. I want to thank both of you for your hard work, for your passion, for daring to come here and speak your mind and provide your own reading and insights of what's happening. And clearly, this is a conversation that has to continue, that will continue. And perhaps next time we'll discuss about the strategy of this second layer you mentioned, that we need to focus on what to do now.
Thank you so much for stressing this. I mean, like about the communication and, you know, like being in touch. This is also a great opportunity just for you to know that CRTA opened the sister organization here, EU CRTA. So it will be like more present here, more vocal, and we're happy to have another partner here.
Great. So, and I want to thank you for your patience and sticking with us and being active. So, and if you'll join me in thanking our speakers for their wonderful contributions. Thank you.